fun to see the creator and the creation hanging out together. What did you call him?
Scully McSkullface.
We're calling him Scully McSkullface at the moment.
At the moment, it's his working title.
It's a working title. Well, I'm wondering whether we put it to a public poll, because then if we've already called him Scully McSkullface, that'll kind of take that option away. Well, maybe it won't. Maybe they'll just be happy to keep that.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, we have the creator.
The creator
In with us.
Very exciting. Yes, our very own Victor Frankenstein. Yeah, I think it's time to kick off. What do you guys reckon?
Let's kick off.
Welcome everyone to this new episode of the Manchester Indie Theatre Podcast. You are here with me, Caroline
and Amelia,
and our special guest today is the wonderful Kitty Ball. But we are first going to run through, as usual, the what's on in Manchester before we get to chat to Kitty about everything she's got going on. So how about we just jump into it?
Yeah, let's start off. So we want to start off with the what's on by giving a shout out to a Manchester Fringe show called The Boys We Were, written by Tom Peters and directed by Holly Ravenscroft, starring John Joyce O'Keefe, Billy Doherty, Patrick Jeffries, Rob Peters and Tom Peters. And The Boys We Were will be on from the 19th to the 21st of July at the King's Arms. So just to give everybody a little synopsis, The Boys We Were is a comedy drama about friendship, masculinity, ageing, and the people who know us before the world tells us who we're supposed to be. 20 years after a boy band with one album, a handful of singles, and a lot of unfinished business quietly disappeared, its former members are invited to reunite for a one-off television special. As old friendships, rivalries, and regrets resurface, four ex-bandmates and their manager are forced to confront what happened after the dream ended, and whether some things are worth revisiting before it's too late. So that sounds very interesting. Big congrats to Tom Peters and Holly Ravenscroft and all the cast involved. This is for The Boys We Were, on from the 19th to the 21st of July at the King's Arms.
And I have a nice connection to one of the cast. Rob Peters is in my off-cut plays. Woo! So shout out to Rob. He's doing an absolutely fantastic job. So my call out is for Name Song Artist by Stage Smokers Theatre Company, and that's on from the 21st to the 22nd of July at the Seven Oaks pub. This is another upcoming Manchester Fringe show. It's this company's first show as a theatre company, so congratulations to Stage Smokers Theatre Company. It's a new one-man comedy show where audiences will join Jack as he attempts to host the best karaoke night of his life, but it all falls to pieces as his addiction becomes impossible to hide anymore. So the show explores Jack's personal struggles with alcohol abuse and addiction, but with fast-paced and silly comedy, questionable singing ability, and even worse, dancing. This is a heartfelt and personal story being brought to life, and you can go and watch Name Song Artist at the Seven Oaks pub on the 21st and 22nd of July. So that's a couple of really exciting looking Fringe shows. The Fringe has just kicked off.
Yes,
really
we're
cool.
very, very excited about it. We're wishing all of the Fringe artists this year all the success with their shows, and we will be trying to give a shout out to as many as we can, so do drop us an email if you'd like us to give a shout out to your show.
Please do. So now,
without further ado,
it's time to introduce our guests. So today we have the wonderful Kitty Ball. Amelia, if you're happy to introduce.
I'll take it away. So Kitty Ball is a writer, director, actor and educator based in Greater Manchester. Her work blends humour with emotionally grounded storytelling, exploring themes of class, community, identity and the quiet resilience of ordinary people. A graduate of Alra North's MA in directing,
R.I.P.
Kitty has also trained with the Young Vic Springboard for Directors programme, an RTYDS,
Regional Theatre Young Director Scheme,
New Directions North at Theatre by the Lake. Her directing credits include Enough, Northern Saint, Seeking Arrangement, Chaos, and Have a Break, Have a Kit Kat, as well as Make It, which was written by our very own Caroline Lamb.
Woo!
And Kitty has also had her assistant director work presented across London, Manchester and on national tours. Kitty has also written for BBC Sounds as part of Northern New Creatives and the Pleasance for their future Fringe projects. She's worked at Alra North, the Arden and Rose Bruford Wigan, and regularly creates and directs projects with local Manchester creatives. And she has also recently completed a course in professional acting practice at RADA. And as both an actor and a filmmaker, Kitty is passionate about creating bold, character-driven stories that balance comedy with emotional truth, championing distinctive northern voices and socially engaged storytelling. So what an intro. I mean, there's a lot going on, Kitty. There's so much for us to unpack here. It's very exciting.
No, it's only because, as I said recently, everyone's just like, go on, give us a bio, and no, I'm going to pick myself up.
Yeah,
absolutely, as you should.
This
is what we wanted. It is difficult to write a bio, but it's great for you to see kind of everything that you've got in your back catalogue, and you should be proud of it.
Thank you.
But it's even harder when you're so multifaceted, because you're kind of like, well, all of these feed into your creative life, so you can't leave anything out. But that means, as you sort of travel along your career and gain more and more experience, it just builds and builds, doesn't it?
Like a lot of opportunities, as you know, with creatives is like, oh, could you do this? And you're like, yeah, I'll give it a go. Oh God, give me a lighting desk and I'll give it a go.
And there's a lot of filling in the gaps as well, isn't there? If you're running a project, but then you kind of, your producer could do with a bit of help. You end up being an assistant producer for a day, and then you might
make a
tech.
program.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, well, does this make me a designer?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Pick something up at a charity shop. Oh, I'm a costume designer now. No,
exactly though. It is very, very much like that. But gosh, I mean, where do we start? There's so much to unpack.
I mean, we could start by talking about Make It, I guess.
I guess we could, that's our connection.
Because that was so great, guys, and I really enjoyed it. It was
Caroline.
Well, you had a cameo as well. I mean,
cameo.
Like the pre-recorded bar scenes. You were my fellow
that was great fun. It was great fun.
It was really fun, and Rob Peters as well was
Rob
a member of the bar staff.
Rob Peters just getting all the shout outs.
He does. Yeah, he gets everywhere, man, and deservedly so. He's very talented. But that was really cool. That was literally, I can't believe it was this February just gone.
I know, it feels like a really long time ago, but
it feels like 2 years ago.
Well, it was 2 years ago because that's when we did our first read through.
That's true.
It's really,
wow.
Because, as I said, being an educator, because I work in with the universities, a lot of students are like, how do you do this? I'm just like, you put feelers down. And I said about Make It, because I think it was February we did it, wasn't it?
It was February.
A few of my students were starting to graduate, March, April, May, and they were like, oh, I want to do some writing. How do you do it? And I was like, you do realise 2 years ago Make It started, and it's only just been there.
And that's the way it goes.
Getting the right people, getting the right time.
And
as we know, you can have your finger in many pies and they might pull off or they might not. And I think it's just, we were just lucky that
we were really lucky, but it sort of started 2 years ago. It's still kind of ongoing, because we're having chats about maybe going back into R&D, redeveloping it, getting something new out of it. But that's the great thing about theatre, is that it's never really finished. You kind of put something on, you go, that was almost exactly right, but I bet we can do something else with it. And I think that's the stage we're at with it now. But I mean, this was a play about the creative industries. It's very pertinent for people around our age, where it's we're really thinking about getting into proper adulthood now. Considering things that people consider typical human milestones, buy
a house,
have a child, whatever. But we're expected as creatives, particularly creative women, to be well, this is the point at which we jump ship, then we can't stay creative. So
there's a lot to explore in that. And as I said, it was also really interesting because we did it at
the Eagle Inn,
and they'd never really done anything kind of theatre-y before. They'd maybe had monologue slams and things, but they'd never had the full play, and I think that was a really nice venue for us to explore. And
it was right, it just felt right. It was there was a venue in the play, and it was Bronte Appleby produced it, and she kind of walked me in and showed me it, and I was like, oh god, this is going to be tough to produce a play in, but it is literally the place. It is literally the atrium.
When you just walk into a place, sometimes you can just feel that it's right, it suits the characters, it suits the piece.
But that's one of your more recent ventures. You've done so much before. I mean, we kind of went through all this. But talking earlier, actually, can I throw a curveball and say, prior to all of this, you have a degree in physics, right?
Well, no, I have a degree in anthropology. A higher diploma in physics. I did my MA when I was 25, 26. So just before COVID. Perfect timing. But before all this, I had no idea about the industry at all.
That's wild.
In that my dad is a farmer and my mum does payroll, and this kind of idea. I think I did the village pantomime growing up, because I was a really quiet child, and my mum was like, go do the panto, make some friends. But then I kind of, as I said, I was a bit of a nerd, and I went to uni and I got my higher diploma and my degree. But while doing that, because I went to Durham, when I was there, because drama and theatre was not on the curriculum, it was a hobby. So I was like, you know, stage managing, directing, doing some acting, usually comedy roles. And I did a play with a hereditary lord. Like he was there
wow.
yeah, so I'm just gonna go chill in Singapore, and then when my dad dies, I'm gonna sit in the House of Commons. And I was like, what the actual hell? You know, you had a lot of privileged people.
Yeah.
And then, so when we graduated, I saw so many of them. They did a second degree. They went to drama school after doing their degree. You know, like, or they went to, you know, like, so as I said, so many of them like did their undergrad, and then they did another degree in like Guildford, Lambda, RADA, or whatever. And I know it's really bad, but you know, you look at these people, and obviously I went and got like a full-time job as a project manager at an engineering company, and I'd keep up with them, and I was like, oh, how's it going? And they're like, yeah, I'm just, you know, I'm in the Soho Courts thing. And I was like, I can do this. If I had the resources and opportunity, not that I'm saying I'm better than, but I could do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just opportunity, isn't it?
It really is. It's drama school, as amazing an experience as I'm sure it is for people. Like a big factor in why I didn't go originally was because of just not being able to. I deferred my place, and then by the time it came round to it, it just didn't feel like the right thing for me anymore. But yeah, I mean, it would be an amazing experience, I'm sure, but it's a difficult one when you feel that you don't have the means to go.
And there's a lot of my university friends are London or like Southern based, and I see them like once a year or whatever, but I didn't want to like kind of move out the north. So that when Alra did that MA, my husband, Andy, bless him, shout out, was just like, look, we've saved up some money, if you want to go do an MA, we'll have to be tighten our belts. And this was so funny because obviously I had a full-time job, he's a scientist, and he was just like, well, we've got to pay the mortgage. I'm like, yeah. So while also doing my MA, I was working like more than part-time, almost full-time, like in KFC.
It's wild, isn't it?
You
always hear about this, that people are working like 3 jobs sometimes to support this, like their dreams,
exactly.
But it must be exhausting.
I just thought of another massive curveball. Speaking of weird jobs, how we actually met was pre-theatre. Like, well, both of us were in the theatre at that point.
That was one of the jobs that was getting me through my MA.
Exactly, that's what I thought. Because we worked together on Light Waves, which is Keys Culture, which is every year they put on a digital light art festival, and Kitty and I met swaddled to the eyeballs in like coats and scarves and high vis.
It was in the middle of December, out in the media city,
which is a wind tunnel, protecting these like digital installations from falling over, basically. But yeah, that's how we met. Job, isn't it?
And because you were a supervisor, I was and then as I said, I did that a few years. That's how we kind of knew each other. And then we kept like
so you just kind of through association of that, it was like I guess you got to speak to each other about your interests.
Followed on Instagram, being like,
the rest is history.
Exactly. I just thought I'd throw that in because that's such a case in point of a weird little job. The loveliest people do it, but it is just the most left field of jobs, and you do it because you just need to find a way of making money while you're pursuing your creative career.
Yeah, exactly.
But now you've gone from drama school student to a teacher at a drama school, which is really cool considering, like you say, back in the day you had no connection with the theatre at all.
Well, I have not been to the Stanislavski Centre. I am not a Meisner practitioner, and there are people at the places I've been that are that. Like, they do the kind of like pure drama. But I'd say I'm more work with like content and kind of work as a collaborator and director, but also a detective of text. You know what I mean?
I love
that. So that's kind of how I place myself as like the academic, in that I am the more practical, on board, kind of making things in that moment, rather than like the underlying concepts of.
You're kind of a curator, aren't you?
Yeah,
you're a curator of people bring in their practice, and you kind of shape it to. I've seen one of your review shows, which is fantastic. Also a writer, just in general.
Well, as I said, that was such an interesting thing, because before that, I wouldn't really class myself as a writer. Actually doing that review show, so I work a lot with musical theatre students, and it's really interesting because a lot of musical theatre students are quite dance heavy. So getting them to just be normal people, like, you don't stand like a dancer in Tesco, so let's just stop and also bring their own thing. That means in their third year, because of the structure of the like pedagogy of the kind of academic year, they kind of build up things from doing little pieces to sections of musicals, and then in the third year they do a review show and then a book musical. So book musical, we like a pre-written one, like Beauty and the Beast, Legally Blonde, blah, blah. But a review show is really nice for the students, because we, as their teachers who've seen them for 2 years, tailor the songs and the characters to them so they can really show off their style.
That's lovely.
So the one Caroline saw was
Called
the best musical, ever, question mark.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had a really big year that year. It was like 60 of them. So it was 30 per act. But we did songs and kind of things from the musical theatre canon to do with show business. So, you know, it was kind of, you opened Act 2 with, there's no business like show business. But throughout it, I wrote kind of like a story that basically there was a ghost light and the ghost light broke, so all the ghosts from the theatre came, and then that's why they were doing all these, like, you know, whatever. And there was a bit of a story throughout it.
And it was really, really well done. It was really well put together.
And then recently I did another one called The Final Curtain, where it was heroes and villains of musical theatre.
Oh, fun, yeah.
So there was 2 groups. So there was the heroes, and it was set in like a pantomime land. It was also really cool as well because someone at the university I worked at was one of the originating people of Choir of Man.
Oh, cool.
So we actually got the Choir of Man set, and if you know the Choir of Man set, it's like a pub front, but you can dance on the tables and the bar.
That's so cool.
So we had like, all my students were like, oh my god, I'm on the Choir of Man set. So being in that kind of world. But yeah, no, that was really fun as well, because it was like, you know, we did Poor Unfortunate Souls.
Oh, yes.
And then we also did For Good from Wicked. You know, like these kind of, you know, like the genre. And it was so nice to be like, I know this student is good at XYZ, so I can write in XYZ.
Yeah.
And I think that's been nice for me as this kind of idea of curator of content. I think drama school training and kind of how actors approach roles and things like that, and also writers and directors, is this kind of idea of, oh, anyone can do anything is kind of not gone now. Yes, you can, but people want to see what that individual brings to the table. You know, like, because as I said, one of my students, wonderful commercial hip-hop dancer. Right, you put that is your
it.
that use it.
That's your thing.
Yeah,
like
that's your thing. Like, show that off, and that is your like USP.
It's great to know that about yourself, and what is it that I really love, and what is it that I'm great, and what am I bringing? And everyone like hammers that home. It can be difficult to know what that is sometimes, but if it's obvious, then run with it.
It's such a mix, though, isn't it? Because especially in the world of musical theatre, especially commercial theatre, a lot of the time a role will be originated in, I don't know, sometimes in the 80s and 90s, and then the kind of people who then take on that role are expected to fill those shoes and do it exactly the same as a cookie cutter, and that means that you kind of have to stamp out your originality in a way. You have to, I mean, there's a skill in itself to be able to inhabit a role the same way or similarly to someone else,
but also bring a lot of your own unique.
No, there's often not that opportunity to do that. So when you have something
theatre.
So when you have something like that, and you're like, oh, let's tailor it to someone and actually show off their skills to the maximum. And I think that's a great thing about Fringe theatre. I know we kind of harp on about this, but the fact that people are writing their own work, it means that they can tailor it to them.
Exactly what their strengths are. Yeah, and as I said, with musical theatre, you've got things maybe originated on film in the 30s.
Yeah,
you know,
precisely.
and that's also why I love revivals. And there's like revivals I love hate.
Yeah.
It's like revivals where it's like, well, you've done nothing new with this. Why are we doing this now? Versus revivals where it's like, for example, you had this original character that you could say was problematic or one-dimensional or maybe anti-feminist or, you know, whatever. But then you give them reasons through direction, clothing, stage directions, you know, those kind of non-scripted things that make it to this day. This modern audience.
Give it an explanation, give it more life.
It's like only recently, I know this is a really weird reference, but Shrek the musical.
Yeah.
Halfway through a song, the rats turn from hand puppets to real people. Okay, and that's never explained in the original Broadway version. It just happens because it's a big tap dance in musical theatre. But I saw someone go, oh, I've seen a new version where Farquaad's dumping radioactive waste. This was like, and that makes the rats big.
That's so fun.
But that was a directorial choice to explain why we're suddenly full-grown rats.
That's so funny.
You know what I mean? And it's just things like that where I know that's more of a directorial thing, but that could be you as an actor or, you know, as a student being like, you know what? I'm just going to throw this thing in here.
And use my skills and use my background and use what makes me stand out to bring another dimension to this character.
It is a collaboration as well between the actor and the director, and having those conversations and those ideas and the creative decisions that can go into it. You never know what something can turn into. So it's always good to at least put it out there and see what.
Even though I work with musical theatre actors primarily in my academic, I would say I like musicals, but I'm not a disciple of musical theatre in that if I know I'm doing a small project with them, so for example we do like 3 songs and some scenes, I purposely won't watch anything.
Yeah.
You know, like you've got these bootlegs on YouTube or whatever. I purposely don't watch it because I don't want to be influenced.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of the time the students are like, well, Brian Darcy did it like this, and I'm like, well, you're not Brian Darcy.
Yeah, I
you
love
know,
that.
like,
I love that, yeah.
what do you think? Well,
Yeah.
I thought.
How do you want to do it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting in the past few years going into like the higher education of it, especially because, as I said, I'm more of a university side now rather than a conservatoire.
Yeah.
This idea of people doing like, you know, college and BTECs is great, but the amount of people who come to us in the first year and they're like, am I doing it right? And I'm like, it's not about doing it right.
Yeah.
It's not about doing it right. It's about, are you doing it truthfully to you? Are you bringing your ideas? Or does that make sense for you? And
Do you know why you're making that decision?
Yeah, exactly.
Does it feel authentic?
And a lot of the time they're just, well, tell me what to do. I'm like, no, this is not what this is. Also, as a director, going on my MA and the courses I've done, telling someone how to do something is the worst thing a director can do. You know, like,
definitely.
do it like this.
Yeah, readings,
Because, I mean, obviously you have horror stories of old school directors going, just do it like this. But that's not what it's about, is it? It's about like guiding that person to find something that's suitable for them, suitable for what they need and what the world they're creating needs.
Yeah.
And as I said, trying to not break students, that sounds horrible, but break them out of this cycle of, is it right?
Yeah.
Right v wrong, the black and whiteness of it. Is really.
I don't want to get on my soapbox about my creative education.
Yeah.
But
let's.
Let's get on to that. Because
like, the thing is that when you
that
teach,
fear of doing something wrong is, we need to get rid of that. We need to find a way to help people feel like more confident in that, you know, they don't have to feel that they're worried of misstepping. Like you say, it's not black and white. And there's so much that goes into it and you never know.
And sometimes some of the greatest moments we've found, like in rehearsal, with Make It, with my students, with anyone really, is you reacted truthfully in that moment.
Precisely.
Why don't you keep that?
Yeah.
Or, you know, like you had that idea in that moment. Keep that. Like there was a wonderful one where we did Find Your Grail from Spamalot, and we kind of took the piss a bit and did like a whole gospel choir. So it opened and they were all in gowns and there was loads of smoke, you know, like smoke.
Yeah.
And one of the students was like, at the end of a rehearsal, went, "Oh God, there's so much smoke." And I'm like, that's hilarious.
Just keep it.
Keep
It's
that.
Spamalot. Keep it.
Spamalot is the you know, keep that. And it kept in, and he just got a laugh. And
That's
I think
so
just
funny.
by holding that and being like, that's the true reaction.
In the curriculum, in education in general, STEM is very, very important.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's sort of what makes the world go round in many ways. But there's such an obsession with it, and in STEM, there's right and wrong answers. There's, you know, if you're studying maths, if you get a formula wrong, you get the wrong answer. But that's how we're bringing up our young people and our children in education. And the more we cut creative courses, the more people are going to struggle to determine that there is a grey area, there's a spectrum of correct answers. It's not just right or wrong.
And I think this grey area is also process.
Yes,
We were talking about this. The process and the knowledge to have the confidence to fail, to not do it quite right, to find new things.
It is scary, but
scary.
it's...
But I think that scaredness also, I've seen students be scared and mistake that for being triggered or being put to do something they shouldn't have to do.
Yeah.
And I think there's difference between being pushed and like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And uncomfortableness.
Yeah, and rising to a challenge as well. Like, you know, I think you were saying a few episodes ago, Amelia, you were saying about how you like to be uncomfortable, and you clarified afterwards that you didn't want it to mean it was wrong, but you like to be challenged.
Yeah, I felt like when I said that, I want to feel what I need to feel in that moment that is honest and real, even if it is uncomfortable.
Exactly.
That is a separate thing to doing things that completely cross your boundaries or you don't feel comfortable with. So they're two very separate things, but being able as an actor, I think, to explore kind of the discomfort of really difficult emotion and a really difficult subject matter.
Oh, yeah.
It's so important for your growth and also your experience as an actor.
Yeah, but it also is really hard because there's about 3 or 4 like principal core like lecturers where I work, and we just won't touch musicals like Heathers or Spring Awakening because we're just like, you want to push people, and as I said, sometimes we do sections of it, but exploring all that with a 21-year-old with the education they've had and the, you know, the black and whiteness and then not being able to explore, sometimes like we just arm's length.
Yeah, you worry about how it will be interpreted by
Exactly.
people who haven't been taught to interpret things within a spectrum.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And also, like, you don't want students sitting in it for 6 weeks and feeling
uncomfortable, but in a bad way.
And I think you need to do challenging things, because I believe theatre represents possibilities to explore challenging things, but in that safe way. And I feel like maybe that academic setting is maybe not always the best.
But it's such an interesting area to discuss.
It really is, and it's so important.
Answers. Yeah, it is really difficult.
Yeah.
But, obviously we've talked a lot about your academic career. I don't know if we actually delved into how you moved from your original disciplines into being a creative, and your kind of trajectory through there, where you've worked as an actor, you've worked as a director, you've gone into film. So, I mean, do you have a little potted history of how things worked out for you like that?
So, out earlier in the podcast I said Alra RIP.
Yeah.
If you don't know, Alra North was the Academy of Live and Recorded Arts, and there was the North and South campus, and that's where I did my MA, because I did actually get into other drama schools in London.
Well,
and as I said, my husband was like, we can, and I was like, I'd rather stay in the North. So Alra did it, and I just finished my degree, and about a year afterwards they did a call out for a part-time, can you just help organise some stuff? And I was like, oh, I know you, and I got it. And then 6 months into my job, it's quite funny, I was on the set of the Take That Greatest Days movie.
Amazing.
And I had one line.
Iconic.
And it was cut. I was so annoyed.
No.
They dubbed me. But I was having the best day of my life. I was on the Take That set. I saw Gary Barlow. It was great. And then I found out on social media that Alra North had closed.
You found out on socials?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Because, as I said, I was on set. There was meant to be this staff meeting, and I thought, I'll catch up. And found out the whole school had closed, and I lost my job on social media. And obviously the students had but after that, Rose Bruford took over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I got a phone call about 2 weeks after it closed down from the woman, Kate Coogan, shout out, amazing woman, who stepped up to be the new principal of the school. And she went, look, I know you've only worked part-time, but I see your potential as someone who can work with students, developing, directing. And she gave me a full-time job for 2 and a bit years, where I was working with the foundation students.
Yeah.
So kind of, I wasn't teaching them, because as I said, I had no teaching experience.
Sure, yeah.
But I was kind of coordinating.
Yeah.
And I was bringing people in, and when their final show was Chaos by Laura Lomas, and I directed that, because the other projects I've been doing in these past 2 years proved to Kate that I could direct.
That's so
And
brilliant.
that was the first thing I'd fully directed, a full length in a drama school versus a fringe, and that was kind of the starting point. And sadly the school changed direction and whatever, and I thought, oh, this is not what I want to do anymore. So I started going freelance. So I worked at the Arden, and that was actually the first time I'd worked at the MT lot, and they asked me to do abridged versions of Carousel and Oklahoma, and that's when I first started looking at this idea of acting through song, because that's that kind of speciality, working with musical theatre students, because obviously they have singing teachers, they have dance teachers who have worked on huge West End musicals and whatever, but I'm here but you can sing a song, but what does it tell me? Because there's difference between a pop song and a musical theatre song.
Absolutely.
So that's what I did at the Arden, and then I got someone said, they want someone to do something similar at where I work now, which is BIM Performance College, Manchester. So that's how it all worked. And then they were like, we're wanting someone 2 days a week full time, and I'm like, so put my name forward, and that's how I've been doing that. And as I said, this 2 day a week job grows during the year when I'm doing these full review shows, and then it comes back down, and it's really nice because I know the university schedule's there. I know, I'm going to be really busy around November.
Yeah, so you can sort of plan your
versus
life and
this
your
summer,
freelance work.
Freelance work. This summer, I've got so much toil to take, time off in lieu, that I'm just free summer. So, but it's a really nice thing, as I said, to kind of pay the bills while also being creative.
Yeah, that's perfect. But that's such a great example of someone putting faith in another person.
Yes.
That, it's considered such a sort of a niche skill to educate in the performing arts, and the fact that this person could see that you could do it and put faith in you and allowed you to develop and grow within the role. You get better teachers and better workers that way, because you're learning as you do it.
And I do honestly feel the best teachers are the ones who have done it.
Yes.
Because
you have that level of understanding, and you want to make,
exactly.
like we were saying about the grey area, and not wanting kind of the kids to go away, or kids, younger people, you know, to go away. You want them to go away with that confidence, and it might not necessarily click straight away when I guess all you've known is this kind of I need to get this right, black and white sort of mindset. But then I think sometimes over time the penny does drop, and as long as you're kind of giving that, I guess, to them, and then it's up to them what they then go and do.
And as I said, with the students, like halfway through third year, we sit down with them and go, look, you've got this far. And it's okay to not want to go any further.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So many of them go, this has been great. It's really helped me. I know I've done this. I've achieved this, but I don't want to do this. And I've had students who, on one hand, have gone off to do national tours, Blood Brothers tours. That's obviously what they want to do. But then others who have been like, I want to become a choreographer.
Yeah.
I want to be a dance teacher. I want to work with students. Or they've worked on a cruise. Or some people have gone, I just want to be a hairdresser. And I'm like, good for you.
Exactly. And that is absolutely fine. And that's great to sort of come to that realisation about yourself.
Exactly.
And but that time that you've invested in it, it's done so much for you, whatever you choose to do after.
Exactly. And as I said, this is the whole kind of seeing their journey and just them developing as people, developing their confidence, their voice. I think as we talked about, drama school is about developing your voice. Because when you go to auditions, you're at an audition and anyone in that audition room could do it, you know. But it's finding your voice and people understanding your voice and going, that's the voice I want to tell.
That is the voice I want to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's really interesting.
But like with you personally, what was the point at which you decided you wanted to go down a creative route? Because obviously you started off as...
So as I said, I did a lot in university, and that was
as like sort of just as extracurricular stuff.
Extracurricular, and I just found it really fascinating, this kind of idea of telling stories that were relevant. At university, I was the minority. Me, a white woman in a minority, was weird because I was not privately educated. So I pitched a show that was very northern based, and and people were like, why would it? No. And I was like, oh, and that made me go, right. And also a lot of the shows that I saw at university, which were done, as I said, by students, were just copy pasted from London things. You know, like, I went home and saw this version of Hamlet with Rory Kinnear. I just want to do it with my mates.
So you're really interested in regional work,
exactly.
Representation of other,
So as I said, when I was like, let's do Romeo and Juliet, but in a post-apocalyptic Mad Max thing, everyone was like, what the hell? And I was like, wow, sorry for trying to do something original. You know what I mean? But, so
that's sad though, because you would like to think that, you know, in any group that you would be supported with your ideas. You wouldn't want to come away feeling like, oh no, what, actually I just scrapped that.
But the thing is, when we did it, people came up to me going, I didn't think I'd like Shakespeare, but the way you did it helped me.
It makes it more accessible.
Exactly.
It kind of brings them in. It brings it into a context that people.
It's like we know the story. We want to see it done in different ways.
Exactly. But and as I said, then it was all these people being like, well, I'm doing it from my lens, and that's fine. And I was like, but what about my lens? Not that I was being creative out of spite, but I was just like,
sometimes you have to be.
But I was just like, well, why can't I do it? Why can't I, as I was northern in the north. You know what I mean? So that was kind of, I felt like a little bit safe doing my MA in the north, but as I said, that was kind of opportunity and whatever. And but I do imagine that if I went down to London and did my MA at East 15 or wherever else I was accepted. I actually walked, this is so funny because we're going to go on to it. I walked in to do the audition/interview for my MA in directing at RADA, and I literally walked out. I was like, this is not for me, the vibe.
Interesting.
And then it didn't recover, but now going back for like only a short course, but in a different context, I felt more I had the confidence and the kind of foresight to scrape through the, you know what.
And you change, I guess, and your perspective changes.
Exactly.
And everything that you've done kind of since perhaps your first initial, you've changed.
Well, let's move on to that. Let's discuss, because it's only this year as well. Only a couple of months ago that you went and did your short course at RADA. So like, I'd love to hear more about that.
Caroline told me.
She's gone to RADA now.
You hear RADA though, don't you? And you're like, oh my god, RADA, darling.
So I'm really fortunate that I've got this part-time job and a lovely husband who supports me, and work also encouraged this. It gave me a token amount of money to help me towards the financial costs of this. But I applied for the RADA, their new professional acting practice course, and it was a week-long course where some absolute legends of RADA teachers gave you day-long kind of workshops.
That's
and
incredible.
it was, I kind of did it because I say I'm an actor. I'm not really. I just give it a go because a lot of the time it's like, oh, I'll help out, whatever. But I went in with the kind of view that I am asking actors to do these things.
Yes, yeah.
I need to experience it myself now.
That's
I feel like
great.
I'm at a point where if I'm going to ask someone to, I don't know, pretend that they're changing oil in a car. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
or
yeah.
I'm asking them to do these kind of exercises and go on these journeys.
It's like understanding from the perspective of the student, like what that is actually like.
Exactly. While also maybe nicking some of their exercises, methods, ideas.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
of
Like,
course. No, I completely, I get that. And it's, I'm always interested as well in the idea of going back into education and exploring something. And it's a never say never, for me. Because I do think at any point in life and wherever you are in your journey, you can gain so much from being back in that
creative and not creative, you know what I mean? I'm sure there's like accountants that have to go and read,
absolutely.
But as I said, so it was a week-long course, and we kind of did introduction to acting from like a professional standpoint, in that everyone in that room had some level of experience. Like they'd either been to drama school or drama school in different countries.
Oh, well,
and they were we had people from Hungary, Australia, all that sort of stuff. So we had that introduction, and actually we covered a lot of Meisner in that day.
Yeah.
And for me, I'd never done Meisner professionally, but my students do. So now I'm like, oh, that connection. Okay, I know that they're learning Meisner with X down the corridor. What can I say that connects it all together? You know what I mean? And then we did like physicality, we did voice workshops, we did improv, we did Shakespeare, we did, like the working actor, like how to create
really
like the
handy,
business
yeah.
side of it.
Yeah, but more kind of entrepreneurial, finding things, and just also techniques of entering a room, like being that,
and sounds really invaluable.
Yeah, and as I said, so many kind of exercises that I've already nicked and put into my repertoire for being a teacher, but also for when I'm working with people, but also if I'm ever an actor or even as a writer, because I was talking to a lot of people there being like, we make our own stuff, and I said a lot of people were London based or in the different so that was nice for them to also be like, oh, so what's happening in Manchester?
Of course.
And they were like, oh, this, and I was telling them all about it, and they're like, oh, that sounds great. And I'm like, we had a wonderful guy called David, and he's an American, and he's lived in London for like 30 years of his life, and he's kind of retired and become like a retired actor.
Cool.
And I'm just like, come up to Manchester, David. He's like, yeah, I think I will. And so he's coming up soon. And
amazing. Recruiting people.
Get them up
but
here.
make it, but it's being able to share that with people. Because he's like, I've lived in London for 30 years, but I've not ever been out of London. I'm like, oh, God, come on up.
Experience Manchester.
Exactly.
The rest of the country, regional stuff.
But also being in that short course for a week, I feel like I could message those people. When you're with people in such close quarters. I guess if you've ever done drama school.
I did National Youth Theatre.
Caroline
and I both did. And that experience, I just remember us all being sat in a circle at the end with a box of tissues.
Yeah,
and I was just like, oh my God, I love you all.
But that's amazing that you got so much. You just described how much you did, and it was, a week long?
Yeah,
and that was it. That's amazing.
And it was 10 till 7.
Oof,
it was a lot.
That's a lot.
Wow.
That's intense. But also, I just want to kind of cycle back to you saying you're not an actor. You just give it a go. Well, you are an actor. But you've learned kind of in reverse, haven't you? I think that makes you much stronger because you can see the process, you can direct the process, and you can then apply it to yourself. You're kind of able to put your money where your mouth is in that sense, whereas other people kind of come at it from they are being instructed, and then they just try and achieve what someone else wants them to achieve. It's a really interesting way of looking at it.
As I said, a lot of the time people are just like, you what? So I didn't start off doing this. I feel like a lot of the time it is me, as we talked about earlier, putting my finger in many pies. And then, or other, see what spaghetti strands stick at the wall. So I wrote for the BBC for a development programme.
Amazing,
obviously on my CV I can put, I've written for the BBC, but that was literally one thing. But that was me throwing spaghetti at the wall, going, I have this idea, which I had when I was doing my MA, which was a project for my MA, and I then took it to the BBC for this scheme. And then I got it developed. It was like an 8-minute audio drama, you know what I mean?
But these things can come back around
Exactly.
again. Once you've got it on your CV, you've been through that door, you've had a look, and you might return to it sometime.
Exactly. And as I said, that
good.
BBC thing also then came to be Northern Saint, which was my one-woman show that I wrote for the Pleasance. So it's like that idea is like...
There's never a wasted experience. It's always applicable.
Yeah.
But anyway, what we need to do now, I think, is we need to go back through the What's On. Because we're running towards the end of the hour already.
As sad as this is, because I'm really enjoying it.
But we've got a few minutes.
Part two will be later in the year. I'm joking.
But no, we've got stuff. I mean, you've got some very exciting things coming up that we can't talk about right now. So we need to do a part 2.
Yes, we absolutely will.
Let's quickly run back through our What's On, Amelia, if you're all right with that.
Yeah. So, What's On in Manchester? We're going to give a call out to The Boys We Were, Greater Manchester Fringe show, written by Tom Peters and directed by Holly Ravenscroft. The Boys We Were is a comedy drama about friendship, masculinity, ageing, and the people who know us before the world tells us who we're supposed to be. And this stars our good friend John, Joyce O'Keefe, Billy Doherty, Patrick Jeffries, Rob Peters and Tom Peters. And The Boys We Were will be on from the 19th to the 21st of July at the King's Arms. So best of luck to those guys, and we will drop links to these shows as well.
We certainly will in the description. And the one I'm calling out is Name Song Artist by Stage Smokers Theatre Company. That's from the 21st and 22nd of July at the Seven Oaks Pub. And this is a piece about addiction and alcohol abuse, but it's sort of coupled with fast-paced and silly comedy, questionable singing ability, and even worse, dancing.
Sounds like me.
Yeah.
And I work with MTs. It's
Yeah.
So they're always like, how should I sing this? And I'm just like, I've never had a singing lesson in my life.
Yeah, don't ask me.
Sorry, carry on.
No. But yeah, it's a one-man comedy show about Jack, who is attempting to host the best karaoke night of his life. So yeah, these are the 2 shows we're calling out on the Fringe, and please do check the description for links.
And please email in if you have a show that you would also like us to give a shout out.
mitpoddy@gmail.com, mitpoddy@gmail.com. But it's about time, I think, to wrap up with some final thoughts.
As sad as
and
it is.
It does feel like we've not had much time at all.
No.
But we will.
It's gone so fast.
We will have more time, I'm sure, because I know you've got some exciting things coming up that you're not allowed to talk about, like I say. But you're kind of doing forays into film and TV now, aren't you, in some ways?
So shout out to Bewitched Productions, which is Jack Berry and Gwyneth Evans. Whoop, whoop.
Yes, love them.
Who have also worked with Caroline on Make It. And,
Absolutely.
We started a couple of years ago doing horror shorts, and I've slowly got into this kind of idea of filmmaking. And yeah, I've got a really exciting thing coming with a short film that I've written, but I can't talk about it yet.
NDAs right now.
NDAs right now, but that's exciting. And I've also, talking about having your own voice and knowing your own identity, I'm going to be in a advert soon.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
Playing a farmer, because I grew up also as a farmer, because my dad's a farmer.
That's so
So
cool.
that's, that was
There you go.
also why I was very out of my depth at a university.
Well, watch out for that, Ian. An advert playing a farmer.
Yeah.
Let's say who it's an advert for, or...
No, not yet.
That's fine. NDAs all over the place. But just in the last couple of minutes, do you have any kind of thoughts or pieces of advice for someone who wants to enter the creative industry, either to do what you're doing or something else entirely that you think might be useful for our listeners?
So, as I said at the beginning, I had no idea about the industry. And I think for me, what made me go, right, I'm going to go study this and do it well, is asking so many questions and asking obvious questions. I know that sounds stupid, but
not at all.
The first thing I ever remember going to is the Manchester Royal Exchange Creatives Day. And I don't know if they do it anymore, but it's kind of an afternoon where you turn up and you just network.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down next to someone and I went, hi, I'm not actually a creative. And they went, don't be silly, everyone's creative. And I went, okay. And talked more. And I was kind of debating what I wanted to do creatively. And this person was the director. And this director, I'm going to shout out her now, she probably won't even remember me, but she's called Lexi Ward. And Lexi worked at Theatre by the Lake and whatever. She does things. And Lexi is now the associate director on the play that went wrong in
amazing.
London.
Oh,
and
very
she
cool.
is the one who went, oh my gosh, what you're sounding like is you want to tell stories and bring people on board with you.
Yeah.
And I think asking the questions and also getting why you want to be creative. Does that make sense?
Have a reason behind what you're doing.
Yeah. Because I wanted to tell stories with people. I didn't want to be the person at that point to tell the story.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a writer. I didn't want to be an actor. I wanted to bring people on board to create something all together.
Yeah.
And I think by finding that out, by finding that reason, by asking those questions, at different points in your career as
Sure.
well.
It'll change.
It'll change.
It will,
Now I've
and
written
it
this short film, I'm like, I am the only person right now who could tell this story, so I know I have to write it. Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Yeah, it really makes
Absolutely.
sense.
You know,
So-
you don't have to put yourself, we say
In
it
a
every
box.
time, but you never have to, you know, limit yourself to
No.
this one role. There's so many
Yeah.
things you can do, and it can
Exactly.
change all the time.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
always make a different decision.
Yeah, but it's
Absolutely.
asking those stupid questions, but also asking yourself why you're doing that.
That's a really good double-sided. Ask questions of yourself, ask questions of the world, ask
Yeah.
questions of other people. Just keep asking questions.
Yes.
But that is literally all we have time for. If you want to be a guest on MitPod, then please do email us at mitpoddy@gmail.com. That's mitpoddy@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram, MIT_pod. If you want to be a guest, but you don't have to be a guest, we can just shout out your show if you've got one on. If you've got an opportunity to offer, we can shout that out. Anything like that.
If you've got a voice note you want to send us, we can play it.
We love that. We love that. Literally anything and everything, apart from abuse, because please don't be mean.
Yeah, please
We're
be
really
nice. Yeah,
We're
please be
nice,
nice.
so nice
Please be
too.
respectful.
They
you
are
know.
so nice as well.
Absolutely. But thank you so much, Kitty, for coming on. It's been
Thank
lovely.
you. It's been a pleasure, honestly. And I do think that one thing that I've definitely taken from this chat is to just throw yourself into things
Oh,
and just
100%.
experience, because it sounds like, you know, you've done just that and you've done so many amazing things. So I think that's very inspiring for anyone listening.
It really is, absolutely. And Kitty's just a pleasure to work with. I'm sure we will work together again in future.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
you-
watch this space.
Watch this
Watch
space,
this.
but gosh, you've got so much going on. It's so exciting. I'm really excited to hear what your upcoming projects are.
Thank you.
But for now, from all of us at MitPod, thank you so much for listening, guys.
Thank
and we'll be back
you.
again soon.
Bye.
Bye.